meditate for just a little bit also. So the words to this first chant are very simple. Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru 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 Jai Guru. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru 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 Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru 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 Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru 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 Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru
Let's pray together. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, our beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. Great Masters, awaken us that we may understand the true purpose of life, that we may seek you wholeheartedly. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
So we'll take this chant to meditation. It's a simple chant. I want only thee, Lord, thee only thee. Please join along.
I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want thee, only. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. 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 I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee, only thee. Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, 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 Lord. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only.
Now let's go into meditation for few minutes. Let's try to call out for God, interiorize the mind, let's feel God for next few minutes. Let's end this short meditation by sending healing vibrations to the whole planet. Let's rub our hands and chant 3 ohms. Om. 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 Welcome back again to the Autobiography of Yogi Wisdom Daily Wisdom app series. So, as you know, these are the quotes from this book, Autobiography of Yogi. So we go through the quotes 1 week before this and 1 week later, and we select few quotes, and then we discuss over the same. So I'll start today with a quote on December 15th, which is tomorrow. So this quote is from Anandmayi Ma. Before I came on this earth, Father, I was the same. As a little girl, I was the same. I grew into womanhood, but still I was the same. When the family in which I had been born made arrangements to have this body married, I was the same. Even afterwards, though the dance of creation change around me in the hall of eternity, I shall be the same. Anand Mahima, chapter 45, the Bengali joy permeated mother. So now I would want to, this is such a beautiful quote. Now we look at the context of this. So when did this quote happen? And that will give a more clear idea on what really and more. So let's look at it. So Paramahamsa Yogananda ji left India in 1920, and he stayed in US, America for around 15 years before he made one more visit to India. And during 1935 in August, he reached India again, Mumbai, and he expressed in the book, it's expressed like the 12 months of ceaseless activity began. So it was such a busy schedule for him for the next 12 months in India, where he met many saints, where many photographs were taken, and this Autobiography of Yogi book has many pictures of them. Such a blessing that he could have that visit, and he has shared with us all these beautiful images of all these saints. So so when Paramahamsa Yogananda ji comes to Kolkata, he's in Kolkata. He comes to know from his niece about Anand Mahima. Master says that he has already had an article by Anand Mahima in East West magazine, and then there's a chance encounter in Kolkata itself where Paramahamsa Yogananda ji meets Anand Mahima and then invites her to the Ranchi Vidyalaya, and then Anand Mahima accepts. And so again, Anand Mahima comes back to the Ranchi school now, where Paramahamsa Yogananda ji and all the school children are awaiting the presence. In this book, it's beautifully written where the children are all awaiting, where no hours of study, listening to hours of music, and a climax with a wonderful feast. So that's how I remember my childhood days also, where when any guests were coming to our schools, saints. And so next step is Anand Mahima comes, and during this time, when there is some time, then Paramahamsa Yogananda ji asks Anand Mahima, can you please tell me something about your life? And that's when Anand Mahima says this quote. This is the quote I'll repeat again. Before I came on this earth, Father, I was the same. As a little girl, I was the same. I grew into womanhood, but I still was the same. And finally, even afterwards, to the dance of creation change around me in the hall of eternity, I shall be the same. And the next part is like as soon as Anand Mahima says this, she's in a trance, and then both Paramahamsa Yogananda ji and Anand Mahima stay in that way for an hour before they start having a she comes back into to her material existence back from her inner world. all these saints, just thinking about them and meditating about them and visiting those places have such a effect on us that each time I got to visit Anandmayama's place in Varanasi few months back, and it was very memorable. Yeah. Now I'll pass this on to Jamal for the next quote.
First things first. Okay, so that was a very good quote. In fact, I wanted it too, but he got it first. And it's going to tie into what I'm going to talk about here. So this one from the app is from December 10th. Those who cling to the cosmic illusion must accept its essential law of polarity. Flow and ebb, rise and fall, day and night, pleasure and pain, good and evil, birth and death. This cyclic pattern assumes a certain anguishing monotony after man has gone through a few thousand human births. He begins to cast a hopeful eye beyond the compulsions of Maya. And that's a statement by Paramahansa Yogananda in chapter 30, The Law of Miracles. When I first read those words, anguishing monotony, I could relate so much to them because I used to think, is this all that life is about? That we wake up, we have our breakfast, we go to work, we come home, we have our dinner, we watch a little TV, we go to bed, we do it again, we do it again, we do it again. And you think, is this all I'm going to do, until I'm 100 years old? Well, no, maybe I'll go take a little vacation by the seaside. But even then, what are you doing there? You're waking up, you're eating breakfast, and okay, maybe you're not going to work, you're walking along the beach, but then you're having lunch and dinner and you go to sleep and you do it again. And you just wonder, there must be something more to life. I felt deeply in my soul before I came to Ananda that there must be something much, much more than just a little bit of food, a little bit of sleep, a little bit of diversion like TV, movies. And I knew that there must be something more, but I didn't really know where to look. But an interesting thing in the quote that Primdas just read, that Anandamayi Ma talked about the hall of eternity. Though everything's changing around her, that she remains in the hall of eternity. Where do you think that hall of eternity is? Do you think it's some place that you go and you go find it over there or over here in some sacred city? That hall actually is right within you, and that you can find that hall of eternity within yourself. And so if we, it's another interesting thing that if you think about yourself, that when you were a little child, just this quote he was reading, or as you got older or whatever, there's some part of you that was always the same. And if we can hold on to that part, if we can identify that part of us is the soul. The part of us that says, no, no, I'm different. My body's different. But are you that body? Or no, no, I'm much different now. My mind is much sharper. I know many things. But even, are you your mind? It's an interesting thing to think about. There was a lady at Ananda village who, at the end of her life, was developing Alzheimer's, I believe. And she would meet someone and say, hello, nice to meet you, what's your name? And 2 minutes later, hello, nice to meet you, what's your name? And people were thinking, oh my gosh, she's losing her mind. And Swami Kriyananda said, it's only a mind. Meaning that it would come back, number one, in her next birth, but number two, that we're something beyond the mind. And if you think about that, then the place to look for this hall of eternity is in meditation. That if we can learn how to go deep inside ourselves in meditation, we can go beyond all of this duality. We can go beyond the five senses of hot and cold. But as we really get good at meditation and learn to go very deep beyond, we even can go beyond things like life and death. Because even these two, they're just two different aspects of duality. And that might sound a little bit ridiculous to be able to go beyond life and death. These actually are just something that are in our own mind. That this whole world is something that we're just creating. It's a dream that we're created by our desires and with our thoughts. And we think, I want this, I want that. And we run around chasing it. One saint said to Devarshi Ji that when you get in that car and you drive away from here, just imagine that the car itself is staying still and that the road under you is just continually coming at you, like in a video game that children play. It's an interesting way to look at life. That actually you never moved. That just this world around you is just dancing and just changing. But here's another very important and interesting point. That, yeah, it's all right for us to talk about this a little bit, to think about it a little bit, but you'll never actually achieve liberation. You'll never actually come to understand these words that we're talking about this evening by just talking about them or even by thinking about them. That you have to experience them, that you have to go within yourself to some place beyond the mind, some place, a place of stillness within yourself where everything is absolutely okay and where you can see that actually this world is just a dream. So don't try to think yourself out of this dream. It won't work. In fact, you'll drive yourself crazy. As Master put it, that if you hit your dream head on a dream wall, you're going to have dream pain. But as we learn to rise above that pain, then we can begin to understand what this is all about. I don't know how much time I have, but there's another thing that I want to talk about here. And that is, Master says, after a few thousand births, that then one begins to cast a hopeful eye towards something else other than just this anguishing monotony. So there is hope that the masters come, that Swami Kriyananda, he came, all of the great ones, they come so that we can have hope. So because it looks like there's absolutely no way out and we begin to despair, but there is a way out. That way out really is meditation. It's Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga, if it's done with concentration and devotion. And I'm going to talk about that the next time I speak here. But the last important thing that I want to talk about, think about how many lifetimes you've lived, that it's been probably more than you might believe. Once I heard Swami Kriyananda, he was making a joke about, he'd read some book and some lady had been hypnotized, and she said, I remember my past 40 births, or the hypnotist helped her remember her past 40 lives. And she was thinking that she had only had 40 other lives. And Swami said, try 40 million. And if you think that you've had, and he meant human births, we won't even get into the other births of being animals and all that. Think about it, 40 million births. And then even that, it's nothing compared to what Omar Khayyam says. I forgot, in the Rubaiyat. He says that a day of Brahma may go by and that all of God's children, they fall asleep. And then after the night of Brahma, which goes on for God knows how many years that is. All I know, it's a big number. You can look it up again in the autobiography of a yogi. Then all of those who were cast into illusion, they wake up and they start right back off from where they were. It's mind-blowing. But the point that I wanted to make in all of this is, how old are you, actually? It's something to really, really think about. If you think about your true age, it will take you all the way back to God realization, or to laugh a little bit. My brother's third standard teacher, all the little boys and girls would ask, how old are you? How old are you? She would say, I'm as old as dirt. So we actually, if you think about it, we're even older than dirt, that we were born before even the planets were born. But it's something that you have to think about, and it can help take you all the way back home. I'll turn it back over to Primdas.
Thank you, Jamal. That was beautiful. Okay, now just coming back to the last quote before I move to the next quote. I just remembered we had this beautiful retreat with Jyotish and Deviji at Kandala. And Jyotishji was, from the beginning, he brought this visualization picture about a funnel. So that really helped me. So sometimes he said that visualizations stay with us longer. Something like stories remain with us longer. So the visualization he gave was a funnel where he said any decision or any thought you think, if it's going to expand and if it's going to go up, it's something uplifting. And if it's going to contract and come down, it's now not so uplifting. So it's always good to do something which is uplifting and going upward and expansive. So that was a good example. So you can think of any time you want to do a decision or you want to make a choice. I think this funnel example is one of the best examples. So you can just think whether it's taking you in and up and expansive, or it's going to bring you down and out. Okay. Now coming back to the next quote. This is from December 20th. Paramahansa Yogananda ji, chapter 46. This is Paramahansa Yogananda ji is repeating this, is saying these words here. This is when he goes to meet the woman yogi who never eats, Giribala. One never knows how great yogis or yoginis will react to the thought of publicity. They shun it as a rule, wishing to pursue in silence the profound soul search. An inner sanction comes to them when the proper time arrives to display their lives openly for the benefit of seeking minds. Here, the context is even from the beginning, this chapter is an adventure, right? If you read it, like many people tell that Giribala's place is somewhere in inside place, and it's not worth taking your Ford car. And Paramahansa Yogananda ji says it's like a shame to the pride of Detroit to not take the Ford car there. And finally, Mr. Right and they all start taking the car, and so what happens, they go through these jungles. Many times they get down and they are really moving the car. It's more like a bullock cart where they are pushing the car many times, and they end up near a mango tree where they taste all these mangoes, and where master makes this comment where a Indian heaven can't be dreamed of without a mango in it. And then they realize that the sun is setting down, and they need to capture some photographs of the saint who never eats. The story is that she has not eaten from 50 years, that she has been living on light, ether, and air, thin air. So they remember that their photographs need to capture that person. Otherwise, it will be a problem. Like the Western minds won't believe it then, because Western minds go more for logic. And if there's no photographs, then it will be a waste. And so they rush their speed, and then they finally come to the place where Giribala is. They finally meet this woman who is like in her sari covered. She's like, she looks short, meek, but her eyes are very radiant. And then the first thing they do is click photographs, and she humbly just poses for it, like, and then happens. Then Yogananda ji starts speaking, and he starts asking her to share some of the thing that it'll be like a shame the world doesn't come to know that such a person who lived on the divine inner food stayed, and if they don't capture. And she humbly replies back telling, you know well, bruh, you know well, there is one word she uses. So this is the context. And then Paramahansa Yogananda ji says this sentence that many saints many times they don't want to show it publicly until there's an inner sanction of that. And depending on the same thing, like Paramahansa Yogananda ji also recommended this book, The Saints That Moved the World. Yeah, I hope I'm correct. Yeah. Yeah, Saints That Moved the World. And Saint Anthony of the Desert is one of those saints there. And Saint Anthony, he his example was many times given by Paramahansa Yogananda ji, because for 120 years he persevered to find God. He prayed, he devoted his life meditating, and he never gave up till the end. And God came to him. And he always stayed in the desert. Now he was not a public figure, and there is only one circumstance where he has come out. Yeah, there was a situation where people were arguing whether Christ really was a son of God, or he was just a human spirit, or he was divine or not. And suddenly Saint Anthony of Desert, who came out of his seclusion then, and he just came there, and he just said, I think, few words. I'm paraphrasing here. Just said, I have seen him. He's the son of God. That was the end of discussion. So with the power, like seclusion is the price of greatness, and with the realization he had, very few words were needed to make that impact, where the whole parties were then accepting and the answer was known. There is great power behind the words who are self-realized. Okay, now I pass on the mic.
There are certainly some interesting stories in the autobiography of a yogi of saints who go without eating, like we were talking about there. It is really fascinating to contemplate how do they do that? How is that possible? And, I think this quote that I'm going to read will answer that. You're going to get all the secrets right here from this one little quote. So this is from December 16th, and it is, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment." So this is known as Jesus's first commandment. And it's a very interesting thing. Now, how would loving God with all your heart and all your mind, how would that give you this superpower of not being able to eat? Christ also said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you." And it's an interesting thing. We see it in life, not just on the spiritual path, but often if somebody really, really wants something, somehow they don't get it. But then if they just back up a little bit and say, well, if it comes, all right, if not, all right. And then often that thing comes. And so these saints that they don't want these superpowers, that if they come, all right. If they don't come, all right. But the one thing that they do want is God realization. But as we approach closer to God, that one of the aspects of God is power, and that we end up ultimately getting all of God's power. There's an interesting story that we often tell in Ananda about that. And there's a place in northern India that I've been to called Gorakhpur, and that's named after Baba Gorakhnath, who was a very advanced yogi. He had all of the different cities. In fact, he spent 200 years developing all of the, I believe there's 8 of them, cities, are to be big or small or levitate, or I don't even know all of them. I don't even know if this power of not eating, if that qualifies as a city. So Baba Gorakhnath, he lived for many years, hundreds of years, I don't know exactly. And he was approaching the end of his life, and he'd done all of this tapasya and meditation to gain these powers. And so he could look into his spiritual eye and see beyond this physical world. And so he started looking to locate a disciple that would be able to receive all of these powers. And finally, he found this young man who was spiritually advanced enough to be able to receive these 8 siddhis that he'd worked so hard to get. And so he, I don't know how he got to this man. I'm sure he could have gotten there in multiple different ways. But somehow he got to this man, and they talked or whatever. And finally he told this man, "Are you interested in these 8 powers that I put them in these 8 little pellets of mud? And here, I'll give you these powers if you want them, and you can have them." And the young man, who was this new disciple ready to receive all of this great power, he said, "Are these mine to do with whatever I want to do with?" And Baba Gorakhnath said, "Yes, yes, they're yours to do whatever you want with. I'm giving them to you." And so he takes these 8, material manifestations of these powers. He takes them and he throws them in the river. And Baba Gorakhnath, "What have you done? I worked for 200 years to get all of these different powers, and now I give them to you, and now nobody has them. What have you done?" And so the young man then said, "Still in delusion, Gorakhnath?" And at that moment, he woke up from that last little bit of delusion and was able to achieve the final liberation, that he was still attached to even those little bits of power that he had achieved. So they're real things, and it becomes, as my understanding, not that I really know that much about these things, but that as we become one with God, we become one with God and get everything that he has, including his all powerfulness. I was looking for the Greek word and I lost omnipotence is what I was looking for. So that's part of it, but don't seek after these things, not even the little uh, miracles or even little bits of advancement that might give you one step above your fellow brothers. That look for one thing only, and that is how to love God. So let's get back to this quote so that you can figure out how shall you love God. So earlier in the talk I was doing before, I said practice Kriya Yoga, but I said practice it with concentration and with devotion. That if we can do whatever technique we've been given to find God. If we can do that with devotion, we're already so close. Because loving God is the thing that gives us the impetus, the ability to keep seeking and to keep drawing him or her, or however you visualize God, closer and closer. But without that devotion, ultimately our willpower, that it will dry up. So we need that um, devotion. But it's an interesting thing. Not only devotion will get you there, that you need something else. And that is with all thy strength, that you need energy. And here's why I said it's an interesting thing. We had an 8-hour meditation already in Calcutta, and the sun rises a little early there. And we did our 8-hour meditation a little early there. And in the middle of it, we take a break. So I started doing lots of Mahamudra that I like to do, which, if any of you watching don't know that technique yet, it just raises a lot of energy in the spine. And I felt that I needed that energy in order to make it through the next 4 hours. A different person beside me, she was just kind of praying in the child pose, but I could just feel so much devotion there. And I thought, both of us are doing the exact same thing, just in different ways. That there's many ways to awaken that energy, that devotion helps awaken the energy that we want to lift back up to God. Or we can do techniques like Kriya Yoga or Mahamudra or energization or Kachari Mudra. But you could do all of those and you do it lackluster, that you're not going to find God like that, that you have to do it with energy and with high energy. And actually, we were talking about cities and powers, um, and even, well, I won't say that. God doesn't want me to. But you will be able to develop these type of things by an understanding of energy and by letting more and more energy flow through you and by understanding that you're not this physical body, that you're the energy that animates it. So that was about energy. Now, I also wanted to talk with all that. So when Christ said it, he said all thy strength, because in Kali Yuga they didn't know what energy was. But then with all thy mind also. And this is really what happens when we learn to meditate, that we know that we want God. And here's another interesting story. There was a mother who believed in the power of prayer, and her daughter was sick. She thought, if I just pray deeply enough, that God can come and heal her. So she started praying for a little bit. Dear God, please come help my daughter, help her get well. But after a few minutes, she thought, my husband will be coming home soon, and I haven't prepared dinner yet. In fact, I don't even know what I'm going to prepare because of my daughter. And she, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be praying for my daughter. Oh God, please come. And she thought, but I have to make the dinner, and we have to do this. And what about my little boy? I also need to take care of him. And she had to realize after about 10 minutes, she had to admit defeat. That even though she believed in the power of God, that she didn't have that power of concentration to be able to wholeheartedly, single-pointedly ask God to heal her daughter. And so, even once we get a little bit of this desire or this devotion for God, that most of us, we say, oh God, how I want you, but first let me eat that sandwich. And then I'll get right back. And I'm coming, God, I swear. But the great yogis, like Baba Gorakhnath and many, many others, they're happy to sit by that river for days if need be without eating. Or like Giri Bala, like we were just talking about, saying, I'm seeking God alone. And that with that power that comes, that God maintains their body, God gives them what they need. And you'll find too that if you seek God first, that He'll give you what you need whenever you need it. But we have to have concentration. It's just another essential thing on the spiritual path. Also, you'll find that just even if you say, I want to sit here just for 1 hour, forget about all these days and years and all this tapasya the Baba Gorakhnaths of the world do. You just say, I want to sit here just for 1 hour and go deeper into God realization today. What is it that makes you think that you can't do it? Well, first of all, it's you, that you're your own greatest enemy. That if you mentally say to yourself, I can do it, and I will sit here for 1 hour, even if it kills me, then nothing can stop you if you make up your mind. But if you say, well, I don't know, then you can't do it. That there's a, what do you call that? An affirmation that we do in the monastery here. Um, and we do it every week. And one of the lines is, when so I think, that we can do anything as long as we think that we can do it. So, first of all, we can be our own greatest enemy, or we can be our own greatest friend and tell ourselves, I think I can, I think I can. And there's a little story called The Little Engine That Could. It's a children's story. And the little engine just told himself, I think I can, I think I can. And with whatever your affirmation is, whether it's from a little train who says, I think I can, or whether it's from the great master Paramahansa Yogananda and his affirmation, when so I think, when so I think. So then we go and we make up our mind, I'm going to sit there for 1 hour. But is our mind now going to wander? And our mind can wander so deeply into the subconscious that we start moving subconsciously. We might even stand up or move deeply, and then we, oh, wait, I promised myself that I would sit for 1 hour still. So we have to have that determination, that dedication. But if we have it, that God will come. There's many stories in Master's life where he just sat there, determined, no matter what, even if he was going to die, that God would come. And then God does come like a thief in the night. But he doesn't just come to those who only put out a little bit of strength, or those who only have a little bit of concentration, or those whose minds, are just going here and there, or those who don't have heart. And I'll end here for the last minute talking about what does it mean to pray with all your soul, or to seek God with all of your soul. But of course, we know that we need all those other three things. But there's a part of you that when you begin to pray that deeply, that it's almost as if you can pray no longer with physical words. That happened a long time ago if you're deep in meditation. But you can almost pray no longer even with your thoughts, that your thoughts will become very still and they'll merge into the background, but they'll just be this yearning of your soul. And it's without words. Paramahansa Yogananda put it as wistful yearning, meaning without words, meaning without even thoughts anymore. And as you start going into that, you start merging into God, and you start realizing that there isn't a separation between your soul and the oversoul, or the one soul that's in all things. And it's that devotion, it's that yearning where you never give up yearning that will draw you like a magnet. Yes, you'll come to God, but he'll also come to you. And you'll realize that even the little bit of devotion that you had, even the little bit of practice that you did, it was only this much compared to what you get, because you get the entire universe. You get infinite love, you get infinite joy, infinite peace. What more could we ever want? So now I'll turn it back over to Das.
Thank you, Jamal. Yeah, that said it all. But still, we got few more minutes and we have one more quote now. So the next quote is, this is like a continuation from the previous one. December 21st. Giribala, it appears that misery, starvation, and disease are whips of our karma, which ultimately drive us to seek the true meaning of life. It appears that misery, starvation, and disease are whips of our karma, which ultimately drive us to seek the true meaning of life. I'm going to repeat the story of Giribala for who have already heard. Yeah. Also, so what happens is Giribala in a childhood was was little bit high on eating, overeating now, and she was married at the age of 12 in childhood, and then her mother had already warned her. I think it might not be very good when you go to the in-laws house about how they'll accept you with this sort of habit of overeating. But she did not pay much attention, and in her in-laws house now it keeps happening. Her mother-in-law keeps telling, what are you doing? And she keeps like using many times, torturing her. And finally one day it's all at this high level, and she just tortures her to such an extent that she just says to her with such an the determination that I'm not going to eat again. And her mother-in-law says, how can you stop eating when you can't stop overeating? And then, okay, now Giribala really prays fervently with all the strength, hmm, with all the devotion she prays. And now she goes off and she meets some priest on the way, the home priest, and he suggests that come in the evening, I'll do some Vedic ceremony for you. she's not pleased with that answer. Then she goes near the Ganga or the riverside, and then finally her master appears, and surrounding her with an aura so that nobody disturbs, he gives her the technique where she can live by ether, thin air, or light. So that's how this child became the Giribala who never ate after that for around 56 years, when Master met her at the age of 80. And then this was the situation where Paramahansa Yogananda ji was having a conversation with Giribala about the life. And then he said, "Why don't you teach this technique to others?" And she says, "Master doesn't like it, God doesn't like it, and then all the farmers will be angry, and all the juicy fruits will lay on the ground with nobody tasting it." And then she repeats this sentence, that even these hunger, it appears that misery, starvation, and disease are whips of our karma, which ultimately drive us to seek the true meaning of life. So if we can have this, if you can remember the words of this saint who says that all these things will only drive us to the true meaning of life, and if we can have that attitude, that's so very important, and that wisdom to recognize this. And with this, we are going to end this webinar session. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back again after a fortnight. And Jai Guru.